Okay, so now we are definitely live. So I'm going to start the whole process all over again, if that's okay with everybody. Hello to the public. I'd like to remind everybody at this time, before we start the strategic planning meeting, that we are on the traditional territories of the Subasat First Nation, and we thank them very much for the being able to be here. So just a couple of comments before we get into the meeting. That for the public, we have two portions of the meeting for public interaction. We have verbal comments from the public, where you can make verbal comments in email form on subsequent agenda items. We will pause the meeting for 3 minutes at that time and allow you to email your comments to general@lakecowichan.ca. Comments can also be made prior to the meeting. The second portion of the meeting, where the public can interact, is the question period. We will pause the meeting there for 3 minutes to allow the public to email questions to general@lakecowichan.ca and on items only on this agenda, please. Questions can also be emailed prior to or following the meeting to the above email and to be answered by staff or the appropriate committee chair. Thank you very much for the public to attending, and we encourage you to interact on this platform with us as we value your input. With that, I'd like to call to order the Strategic Planning Committee meeting order, Tuesday, February 9th, 2021. It is now 7:05 p.m. and I am looking for any introduction of late items, please. Mr. Fernandez. Mr. Fernandez.
Yes, I do have an item to add to the in-camera. That would be, in-camera would be adding section 91K, negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of municipal services that are in the Murray State.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything else from anybody else here? Thank you very much. Then I'd like to have a motion to approve the agenda as amended, please. Moved by Councillor Sandhu, seconded by Councillor Vomaka. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that motion is carried. Thank you very much. We have no business arising and unfinished business. Joe, you're not muted, so. All right, so that can move us along to number 4, delegations and representations. We have Dan Casey from Urban Systems. He's going to give us a presentation, I believe, on the active transportation project that he's been working on. Welcome, Dan, and thank you. And to give your PowerPoint, are Mr. Fernandez and yourself going to transfer the hosting so you're able to share your screen?
So.
Councillor Austin.
Question. Is it the same PowerPoint that we were sent that I have on my iPad right now, or is it something different? Okay.
It would be exactly the same, yeah.
Okay, so because I'm looking at it now. Okay.
That's good.
So,
Now you want me to share?
Joe, might be easiest stuff on your end if you just share off of the version you have on your screen.
Okay.
I can cue you up when to click
Okay.
the slide.
Whenever you're ready, gentlemen.
Joe, are you able to share that document, share that screen?
Oh, that document, I don't have it handy with me.
Oh, okay.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just for us counselors, if during the presentation, if you want to mute your camera, that will help with the bandwidth and we'll all be able to see it without any glitches. Just a little tip there.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll get started. I'm unable to share my screen on this end, so I won't have the visuals to support it unless we want to wait another few seconds here.
Can I make you the host now? And would I lose the live recording? Probably not.
Don't know about that second part.
Okay, let me do this.
We're still live.
Good. Okay, are we seeing my screen now?
We're good. Yeah.
The red cover slide?
Yep. Thank you.
Good, okay. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate you making the opportunity to allow me to present tonight. I'm here to give an update on our Lake Cowichan Active Transportation Network Plan project. My name is Dan Casey. I'm a transportation planner with Urban Systems based out of Victoria, and we are the consulting team that's undertaking this project on your behalf. So I'm here tonight just to give a quick overview of our project process, some of the activities that have been completed to date, and also speak to some of the community engagement tasks and then some key takeaways. We've been completing engagement over the last 3 to 4 weeks or so, and so we've got some preliminary takeaways from those activities that I'm going to share with you. So why active transportation? There's a whole host of reasons why active transportation, why to undertake a project such as this. Some of the keys are healthy lifestyles, encouraging physical activity amongst your community. With that comes quality of life benefits in terms of both physical activity and socialization that comes with being outdoors and being outside of a vehicle. Active transportation is equitable, and what I mean by that is all folks in your community can engage in active transportation if designed and planned appropriately. And so versus the alternative being vehicle travel, where generally the young and the old and other portions of the population can't engage in the same way that the rest of us can, and they can experience barriers from that. The environmental benefits are quite large. Any vehicle trip replaced with an active transportation trip has a real positive environmental benefit in terms of reductions in greenhouse gas emissions and other negative impacts on our environment. Local economy, as well as personal finances. Obviously, these are less expensive modes of travel. And then lastly, active transportation is fun. An overview of the project. What is the Active Transportation Plan? It will describe the community's vision and priorities for active transportation. Seems basic, but it's very important. That's really what this document is intended to serve. Who is it for? It's for everyone. It's for your residents. It's for your own staff and council. It's for neighboring communities, external agencies, as well as land developers to really understand with all audiences, understand what the community's vision and priorities are for active transportation. And how will the ATNP be used? It'll guide town policies and regulations. It'll inform future capital planning and hopefully public investments in new infrastructure. It'll give direction to land development so that you as a municipality can communicate to developers what you are seeking in terms of active transportation facilities, whether that's a sidewalk frontage improvement or bike lanes or bike parking or what have you. This document will help make that very clear to future applicants. And then this last bullet is important. The document will be very valuable to you in communicating out to possible funding partners, whether provincial, federal, or otherwise, on which projects are prioritized in your community and hopefully set you up for success in securing external funding through grants and otherwise. So timeline for our project, we started up in November of 2020, and we are due to finish up either late March or into April. It's a fairly compact timeline, and the initial timeline at least was set by this project is being funded through a provincial active transportation planning grant program, which stipulates completion dates for a project like this. And so in terms of project activities, we kicked this all off in November. We completed some initial background review and some technical work related to understanding your current infrastructure and its condition and pulling together some key statistics. Through January and into February, we undertook public engagement. So I'll touch in a minute on exactly what that included, but there were a few different activities that we undertook. And so that happened through the second half of January and into early February. From that, we will be pulling together we call them a what we heard summary report. And so that will summarize what we heard from your community. And it'll be sort of both text-based, but also some visuals with graphs and maps and whatnot. And I'll show a bit of that material in a few minutes here. From there, we're going to work through the rest of this month into March on developing the framework for the plan. Then we'll be back in front of the public for a kind of a check-in to make sure that generally folks in the community are supportive of what the plan framework includes. And from there, we'll work to develop implementation strategy and then finalize into late March and into April. So some initial background information on how folks get around in your community. This information is based on the census from 2016. And so we get those updates every 5 years. There's another one coming in just over a year. So commuting, 6% of commute trips happen as a pedestrian, as walking trips, only 1% as cycling trips. And then 90 in total, 90% of all commute trips are made by vehicle, which is quite high when you cross compare to comparable size and comparable context communities. That's a very high vehicle mode share. Also worth acknowledging that 2/3 of commute trips made by Lake Cowichan residents are to destinations beyond your community. And so generally what that means is they're longer distance trips. And so that's definitely borne out in some of the statistics around vehicle versus active transportation commuting, where I'm guessing for 2/3 of the commute trips, they are literally beyond what is comfortable for walking and cycling. We've made reference to your official community plan to help understand some of the established directions in the community around how you intend to grow and how you intend to provide infrastructure. Specific to transportation, the OCP talks about complete streets and a comprehensive network of pedestrian and cycling facilities. In terms of greenways, there's quite a lot of good information in there on trails and greenways. And so it talks about improvements and enhancements within that greenway system, as well as enhancing wayfinding signage to help people navigate through both trails within the town as well as into some of the more natural areas surrounding. Your official community plan and then your age-friendly plan actually talks a fair bit about the developing an age-friendly community and the need to be accessible and provide public infrastructure and access to public facilities that is designed for universal access. And so I'm actually pretty excited about for this project. The firm that I work for, Urban Systems, we are the lead consultants, but we're working with a independent advisor on this project who specializes exclusively in inclusive community design, universal design. And so he's going to be helping us along, making sure that part of our work is to develop design guidelines that describe what facilities should look like. And so there will be a very specific section on universal design, and that'll be provided by Stan Levenhorst, who's our advisor on this. So really emphasizing age-friendly community and accessible design in this plan, probably much more than we would typically do on a project like this, just based on the real strong policy foundation you have in that area. Waterfront and blueways, yet another really interesting and unique aspect to your community is this the summer phenomenon of river floating, and so the need for improving, expanding access to the waterfront to facilitate those activities, as well as recreation and parks and institutions. And again, this theme of age-friendly design, age-friendly planning comes in. On the right-hand side, there's a few numbers in a table there. What we should be drawn to there, highlighted in the darker red, is that in your OCP, you have mode shift targets of a total of 20% of active transportation trips comprising 20% of all trips by 2030. And so that is quite an increase from what we see today. And it really means there's a lot of work to be done in this area. And so this plan will be a starting point for that, but really how far you get toward realizing these OCP goals will really be dependent on how quickly and how effectively the recommendations of this plan can be implemented. So I mentioned you have an age-friendly plan. There's a lot of good information in there, both in sort of at the policy level, but also some really detailed information related to specific infrastructure hotspots and things like that. But a few key pieces we just pulled from that we wanted to show the group today was first, there was a question in the survey that was completed for that project that asks folks the top 3 least age-friendly aspects of Lake Cowichan. Transportation was one of those top 3, and so really flagging transportation from that perspective. And another question was asked, are safe and comfortable sidewalks available where you need to go? And nearly half of respondents indicated no, not for most trips, or no, never. And so really then also highlighting the need to zero rate in on sidewalks and sidewalk condition for this piece of work. So I mentioned we've undertaken some engagement over the last 3 or 4 weeks. The activities included, we have a project webpage that's up. It also includes it did include we had it up for 3 weeks, an interactive mapping component. There's been a survey that was live again for, I believe it was 4 weeks. We had 70 responses to the survey, which is a nice response rate for a survey like this. We've now had, this slide is slightly out of date. So the one on the right hand side refers to open houses. We've now had 2. And so we had one last Wednesday evening. We had another one this past Saturday. And so between the 2 of them, I think we had attendance in the range of, it was something like 20 folks in attendance with both combined. And I think we ended up with somewhere in the range of 60 unique comments that we teased out of individuals through conversation as well as a mapping exercise. So we got some really nice directed feedback and conversation through that as well. And lastly, we have had a social media presence, and so it's been blasted out through the town's channels, and then we've noticed and been following some of the activity that's been generated from that. And then we had a sounding board activity that was set up at the Country Grocer out in the kind of the foyer, the outdoor lobby area, and we had a series of poster boards that were up and gave individuals who are going to and from the grocery store the opportunity to stop, absorb some information. And we had some really kind of pointed questions and prompts that we were seeking specific feedback on. And so got some nice feedback that way as well. So here's just a couple visuals of what the sounding board activity looked like. So you can see on the right-hand side, a couple of the poster boards that are up on easels in front of the front entrance. And the left-hand side, just to zoom in on some of the mapping we had available that show some of your land use context and your existing facilities. And so worth noting that obviously we're in the midst of COVID-19 restrictions at the moment. And so the activities that were undertaken for this, there's a heavily online or virtual component, and that's really a necessity given the current climate. But we're actually very pleased with the response rate we've gotten here and sort of the general interest that it seems to have generated within your community. And so really good feedback and really good information that we can use to help inform our understanding. And so I'll go through just a couple pieces of kind of key takeaways from, I think mostly from the survey here. So in terms of who we heard from, 80% of respondents to the survey are Lake Cowichan residents, Lake Cowichan or Lake Cowichan area residents. We asked the question, why do you walk? Our responses on the right-hand side, some of the most frequent responses were related to recreation or leisure. And so we heard enjoy nature, parks or trails. We also heard exercise. And then we also heard quite prominently, I walk for access to shops, restaurants, or services. So more purpose-driven walking trips as well, which is nice to know. We asked, what are the barriers to walking more often? We got a few responses like weather. This plan won't change or solve the weather, especially this week. But same with hills and topography, that they are what they are. But things that we did here that are definitely within the purview of a plan like this are existing conditions of sidewalks or pathways, or a lack of existing sidewalks and pathways. That existing condition of sidewalk piece is a real consistent theme we're hearing. We also heard that poor lighting is seen as a barrier, and presumably that's a barrier to feeling safe and comfortable walking in early morning or later in the evening. We asked, why do you bike? Almost exclusively here, we heard that folks are biking for leisure recreation purposes. So top three answers were to enjoy nature parks or trails, for exercise, and to have fun. And so great to know that there's a real climate of cycling relative to active living and recreation. And then we asked a similar question, what are the main challenges for cycling? And so again, weather popped up yet again, but the ones that we're really focusing in on here are related to where folks responded. There's a lack of available on-street bike facilities, or there's discontinuous on-street bike facilities. We also heard themes around safety, intersection safety, and not feeling comfortable out on your bike in traffic. And so some areas we can really zoom in on for this work. We asked a question later on in the survey that was, if you were able to direct investments into active transportation, what specific actions would you target? We heard a lot about repair and maintenance of current facilities. And so whether related to sidewalks or cycling infrastructure, trails, or otherwise. And then we threw this quote from a survey respondent up in the top right, which was kind of hammering home, I guess, what we were seeing in the survey results is that our sidewalks need huge attention. And so we did hear similar sentiments through some of our public sessions last week and this past weekend. So shifting gears a little bit, I mentioned one of our next project activity is going to be to start create the framework for this plan. And so that'll consist of sort of a vision and goals exercise, as well as starting to establish what long-term, what we'd like the network to consist of. And so we've taken a stab at drafting a vision statement here. This is very much a working vision statement. We presented it to the public sessions last week, and we received a little bit of feedback that we might try and weave in the end as well. But when I'm done here, really keen from feedback from this group as well. And so the working vision statement is Lake Cowichan is home to a connected network of high quality active transportation facilities that enable people of all ages and abilities to walk and bicycle safely and comfortably throughout the community. So since we pulled this together as the working statement, we have heard from community members that perhaps the phrase well-maintained infrastructure or well-maintained might belong in there. We also heard from a few folks that it might be nice if we recognize the town's context within the natural surroundings, and so really highlight the connections not only within the community but to recreation and nature beyond the community as well. So there might be some opportunities to update this to reflect those pieces of feedback. We want to make sure that as we move toward establishing your network and starting to identify which improvements in building out the network should be priority, which should come first, that's founded on some pretty strong project principles. And so that's what we've got on the screen here in front of us. The idea with these is these are obviously very, very succinct, very strong statements, and there would be sort of a supporting narrative for each. But generally, the principles that we have in mind, and again, very much in working form at this point, but the network should be comfortable and enjoyable. The network should be connected. It should be for all ages and abilities. It should be safe, and it should help support and prop up the local economy. And so we want to keep these in mind as I mentioned, as we start building out the network, as we start talking about how it might be designed, and also which projects should logically come first. Touched on this earlier too, and one of the themes we really want to weave in, it's not even weave in, we want it to overarch all the work we're doing here, is this idea of universal design. So alongside the principles for the network, we also wanted to present to you and include in the plan the 7 principles of universal design. And so they're on the screen there on the right-hand side. And these really, the underlying principle behind these universal design principles is this idea that if design works for individuals in the community that experience physical or visual or audible challenges at a level different than myself or others in the community, if we meet their needs with design, we've also met the needs for everyone else. And so there's almost no excuse for not doing it. It's not even universal design, it's just good design. And so those 7 principles of universal design are 1, equitable use, 2, flexibility in use, 3, simple and intuitive use, 4, perceptible information, 5, tolerance for error, 6, low physical effort, 7, size and space for approach and use. And so we do want to keep these in mind as the network is built out and facilities are start to be planned and designed. And then some very specific goals for the plan itself. We view these as what the outcomes of the successful implementation of this plan would be, and really what the work is striving toward. So in a simple form, those goals are more walking and cycling trips. They are more and better active transportation facilities. A key goal is no barriers to personal mobility. So this idea of universal design and access. And then lastly, everyone with access to recreation and nature. And so we think these are nice foundational goals. We've got them up here in working form, but more than welcome to input and feedback. So looking forward to what the final plan might look like. And again, this is open to feedback and can be refined as we move along. But we've done a few of these, and generally this is a nice structure for how they end up. So there'll be an overview section that talks about, introduces the community, introduces this document, and talks about how this document's intended to be used. There'll be a section on shaping influences, which talks about the history and geography of your community. It'll talk about community trends in terms of land use development, community demographics and whatnot. And then it'll touch on travel behavior, how people move around, what modes they're using, how far they're traveling. There'll be some information on traffic and on road safety to really paint the picture of how your community operates. Then we'll move into this plan framework that I talked about, which would include vision, goals, and principles. And then we'll get into the real deep part of the document, which should be the long-term network. And so typically what we do is we identify long-term networks, what your walking networks, what your cycling network, what your trail network might look like at full build out sometime into the future. It'll talk about what those facilities might be designed like. So rather than just a line on the map that says a sidewalk, there'll be supporting details that say a sidewalk should be 2 meters, 1.8 meters wide. It should be no steeper than this. It should be brushed concrete. It should be separated from the roadway with boulevard where possible. It'll get into being a little bit more prescriptive so that we make sure that as facilities are built, they're to a high quality and they're safe and comfortable. And then we'll also be talking about some of the support facilities that help support the network and help enable people to get out, walk, bike, and roll more often. So that'll be things like bike parking, how to get folks to and from bus stops, and this accessibility and universal design will be a big piece to that as well. And then lastly, there will be an implementation strategy that highlights discrete actions. It'll prioritize a handful of infrastructure projects. There'll be cost estimates associated with those and a bit of a description of what those works would be. And the real goal there is to make it extremely clear in this final section where the town's priorities lie in terms of what you intend to pursue first, but of most importance is making sure that is very clear for possible external funding agencies to put you in a good position to secure funding to build some of the stuff in future. So to recap, next steps, we are creating a what we heard summary based on the engagement we've been conducting over the last few weeks. So we'll be working on that this week and next. We'll be moving into developing the plan framework, which is really the early workings of the final plan itself. There'll be a second round of engagement through into March, and then we'll be finalizing more than likely come April. So that summarizes what I'd intended to cover. So I will turn it back to Joe, to Lake Cowichan, to I suppose.
Yes, Dan, if you could transfer the hosting back to Joe, and then we'll ask council for questions or comments.
Okay. Good. Sorry, bear with me.
Aha, we did it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Dan. So, councillors and staff, are there any questions or comments you'd like to pass on Councillor McGonigal?
First of all, thank you very much, Mr. Casey, for that presentation. You probably note that urban systems has been used a number of times in various projects in Lake Cowichan, whether it was the downtown streetscape, downtown revitalization, and I look forward to the final report. But I think it's important to differentiate between active recreation and active transportation. There are obviously opportunities throughout our area and surrounding area for those active recreational opportunities. I think the focus on what you approached today in some of your comments was universal design within the infrastructure that we currently have may be failing and may need some attention. I think it's very important that we focus on universal design to accommodate all levels of activity and ability. For instance, sidewalks, letdowns, and options for that. Wherever possible, to focus on those deficiencies, especially in sidewalk infrastructure that was noted in your report. So just to clarify that recreation, although it is an activity, the focus is active transportation and the connectivity of the community and moving forward on those policies and procedures. But I look forward to the final report and the input and moving forward with grant options.
Thank you, Councillor McGonigal. Councillor Bomaka.
Hi, thank you, Dan. I'd like to ask you a question. I noticed that there was never anything as to the results by age category, because having a large population of seniors in the area, of course, we know that they don't bike. And being that we have so many houses that are uphill, that's a little bit hard for seniors, obviously, to go get into town and then have to go back uphill if they are walking. So I was wondering if you had determined that in those results.
So off the top of my head, I don't actually know. And so I'd have to look back at whether that was a question that was asked, so that filtered by age. I can, if it's okay, I might look into that and get back to you.
Yeah, because I noticed, like, even me being a retail operation here on the main street, and a lot of my seniors, they do drive to come shopping, either because they're elderly and they have walkers. They may, have a hard time getting in and out of a car, COPD, everybody has some challenges that make it hard for them to actively walk, never mind to bike. And so I was wondering if that was in the consideration of it. And I know a lot of times, even myself, when I have walked downtown and went, okay, I'll go in and get my mail, go to a grocery store, and of course, go figure, that's the day they have a super sale on. And then you're going, oh, I should have brought my car. And then you walk back home, or you're lugging, your arms dragging with bankloads of groceries. So I can understand sometimes that there are challenges to why people do get into a car and why ours is such a high high amount. I notice a lot of people, they do walk because they walk by here at all hours of the morning when I first open. And so, you know, that's a good thing. But I think Councillor McGonigal had said there's a difference between people who are recreational versus people who are just normal day-to-day living in the area. And then, of course, you have the whole commuting variant too of people who drive because they're leaving Lake Cowichan to work. So I would like to know the age demographics as to how you get the answers.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vomaka. And for a moment there, I thought you were insinuating I needed to sell my bike. All right, thank you very much. Anybody else? Please, this is your chance. Mr. Fernandez?
Mr. Casey, you indicated that as part of your final report, you'd be listing the active transportation priorities and the cost estimates related to those. Would we be able to use those cost estimates for grant application? Should we decide to go that way?
Go ahead,
So
Dan.
every grant is a little different in terms of what they, the level of detail they require. For any that require design, we'd plan to take the highest priority project and do a baseline level of concept design plus costing that would get ready for, that would satisfy the requirements of most grants that I'm familiar with. For the others, the costing, so for example, the COVID relief opportunity that I think just closed 2 weeks back or so, it required a cost estimate and some documentation supporting it, but it didn't require a design. So for an application like that, yes, it would be enough detail to submit on something like that.
Thank you, Councillor McGonigal. Oh, did you hand
How's
those up?
that? Is that better? Don't get me wrong about the recreational point. I just want to make sure that we focus on the transportation portion within our boundaries. I would be more than pleased to look at a collaborative approach with the surrounding areas on an active transportation network throughout our surrounding areas. But when we're looking at most of the focus within the public input is on walkability within our town limits currently, I think that is a focus that we know we have to look at, whether it's through our sidewalk program or our trails that we currently have. And the opportunity for active recreation in the surrounding area could be another focus on the surrounding areas of the regional district, for instance. So don't take my comments out of context. I just want to focus on the transportation, walkability, and universal opportunities within our municipal boundaries.
Thank you. Any other hands for questions or comments? Okay, I see none. So thank you, Dan, for coming, or not coming. I keep on thinking we're meeting virtually. Did you have your hand up, Councillor Vomaka? Okay, for your presentation tonight and your update on the project, and we look forward to the next steps. And do you plan on coming back anytime before it's finished, or the next time we see you will be when it's all done?
I don't think I've actually planned to come back to your group specifically, although the engagement that'll be undertaken in later March, of course, everyone's welcome to join.
Okay, thanks, Dan. So once again, thank you very much, and we'll look forward to hearing from you again.
Good. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Okay, so we can move along now to correspondence, and we have none on the agenda. So we'll move along to verbal comment from the public. So we will set ourselves 3 minutes aside for verbal comments from the public on subsequent agenda items. We'll see you back again at 7:46. Thank you. Okay, everybody, it is 7:46. Just wait for staff to come back to us with any question or verbal comments from the public, if any. I think we might be able to use a buzzer like in a hockey arena.
Or maybe organ music. In Esquimalt, they always played the organ every time somebody got a goal or in the halftime.
Yeah.
Or whatever time it was in between periods.
Ah, there he is. Thank you for coming back to us, Mr. Fernandez. Are there any verbal comments or written
none.
comments? Sorry.
And none.
All right. That will allow us to move along. Thank you. To number 7, that's reports. The CEO regarding strategic planning for the town of Lake Cowichan, and there is a written report attached to your agenda. Mr. Fernandez, do you care to speak to that?
I can indeed. I did a short report. It's probably a regurgitation of something I did in the past. And I know that council at the last meeting recommended that I look at consultants that our adjacent municipalities had used. So I did do that. I got 3 names, and I've contacted all 3. 2 have responded, and I'm having a discussion with one of them tomorrow, and the other one probably the next day. I'm not sure about the 3rd one has not responded. So depending on what they come back with, I'll present that to council for you to decide which way to go. And one of them recommended a light strategic plan, so I'm not sure what that means. And I've
Councilor McGon. Oops, sorry.
Well, I think,
just given you an outline of just what I think we should be looking at to the strategic plan, a time frame that you may or may not agree with, suggested in the second last paragraph.
Okay. Councilor McGonigal, you had a comment.
yeah, and I think the light portion, as was suggested, is what we're focusing on. We don't have to look at something similar that the regional district implemented, which was a very complex strategic plan at reviewing and renewing some of the aspects within that, pertaining to everything from economical to ecological to climate change, etc. I think if we focus on as you say, a Cole's Notes version, so to speak, on what we see in the next 10 years as strategic priorities for the betterment of the community, and how we can focus the finances availed to us for those opportunities. I would think a couple of days session would suffice in that synopsis of where we could go. I like the timelines that you've suggested, but that would be dependent on availability of the consultant and price of the consultant. If it is exorbitant, I think we could do it within the capacity that we have and the expertise that we have within our organization to get us through this process. But an outside view of our views is sometimes a better way of looking at things than just focusing on what we think is needed within the community. Thank you.
Any more hands on this subject? Councillor Sandu, please.
Well, I think the timeline is good, and we don't need to rush this. This is the future, and we just take the time that's needed. And I do like the outside, the idea of an outside facilitator working with us all through that. I think that money is an investment in our community, and I want to see this done right. And I just think if we have somebody outside with the experience and whatnot that can guide all of us. So thank you.
Thank you very much, councillors. The paragraph that I like the best is the 2 paragraphs above the graphic where it starts, it may be prudent to look at least a 10-year plan that allows each incoming council to review and amend the plan at appropriate intervals. So that allows the plan to look far enough out where it just doesn't put that burden on a brand new council if that's what happens, to dive into just a strategic plan right away, but they can just simply look at the living document in front of them and make any amendments that they might want to bring to the table. So that's my favorite part. And because I know, having been through a couple seasons, that it's quite arduous to start into budget, as Councilor McGonigal mentioned in previous sessions, budget, then strategic plan, and then, yeah, you end up drowning in your first month of office. So that's great. Any more comments then on that topic? Mr. Fernandez.
I just don't want council to be a little upset because of the little graph I've got there, which states a strategic planning template for dummies. I just hope they don't take offense to that.
I think it was meant in the best of literary opportunities. You can buy those books.
I have lots of them. I have lots of them.
Boy, oh boy, there's a stream of comments I would love to make, but it's all in jest, of course. I love those books. Now they call it YouTube.
That's
All
why I
right.
referred to Cole's notes and not.
All right, yeah, I love the looks of that report, and I look forward to engaging in that. All right, everybody's happy with that item. Then we'll move on to new business. The one and only item, COVID-19 and upcoming tourism season. So that was one of the topics that I wanted to add. And with the concept of what does it look like for us this tourist season compared to last, with all the updated regulations and protocols put forward by the Ministry of Health, and with the idea that residents of Vancouver Island will be encouraged to vacation within their own region again. And we all know how busy that was for us last year. We don't know. We don't all have crystal balls where we're going to be at this year, but at the current schedule for the vaccine rollout, it doesn't look like any of us at this table, unless we got any 80-year-olds, will be vaccinated by that time. So I'm assuming we're going to all be wearing masks and stuff like that. So I'll stop talking in a second. I reached out to Mayor Stu Young, and I sent you the graphics of what I saw in their community, reminding residents and people passing by of stuff, of things that, reminders, I guess, of what the protocols are in sort of, how do they say? Please stay home when sick. Thank you for wearing your mask. Keep your bubble small and safe. Keep physical distance, be 6 feet, and keep a physical distance of 6 feet in different fonts. So just a reminder to the public and people driving by, they were on many of the boulevards throughout the town, and just reminders. And I reached out to quickly after one of the leadership meetings that we have virtually, to our local health officer for the Cowichan region, and just asked if there was any guidance that they could bring to our council and to our business community closer to the tourism season, that if they could please do that, realizing they don't have a crystal ball either, but just to remember us communities that double or triple in size during tourism season. So who knows where we're going to be at, but just starting to think about it, and I'll leave it to you folks now if you want to talk about it, but I don't see it as a hot button right now, but I just wanted to start us thinking about it. Councilor McGonigal.
You knew my hand was going to go up, didn't you?
Always.
And I think that's a difficult thing is to understand what may transpire.
Yeah.
I was blindsided during my tenure as acting mayor when the guidelines were loosened and there was an influx of people looking for an opportunity to get out and do something. And they came here. And if that's an opportunity again this year, they will come again. Because we have recreational opportunities that are not afforded in a lot of areas within our surrounding area. But what I did note was such a plethora of differences between people in the community as to how to deal with that. Whether it was putting gates up and not allowing anyone in or anyone out, and actually being, if you want to think about staying in place, that would definitely be it. But what would the impact of that be on our local businesses? I think we followed the guidelines that were brought forward by the health authority on trying to stay as safe as possible. If we all adhere to the directives of the health authority, Dr. Bonnie Henry, and adhere to them, I don't think we need my face in a mask on a sign as we're coming into town, for instance. I certainly don't want to see that every time I'm returning. Or I don't want to see any of you guys on that sign either. I think we've done a good part in trying to get the notice out without being Pollyanna. I think you have to be careful as to how we ask people to consider the safety of others. And just by treating people the way you want to be treated, I think is important. But it will be interesting to see what transpires. And I know Mayor Dare, you will take a lot of flack, as I did, for allowing people to come here. But we don't allow them to come, they choose to come.
Yes. Okay. Thanks for those comments, Councilor McGonigal. I don't know if Councilor Sandu took notes, but in one of the sessions at LGLA, they talked about, and I forget which community, their response when the first round of COVID happened, when the word lockdown was in effect, and they reached out to the different sectors within their small community and made sure everybody was on mark on the regulations that were being brought down from the provincial government, but also they came up with a little action plan of their own, and not a militant action plan, just little things that they did themselves and that each business or organization did, and so they were all doing the same thing. So that being said, one of my concerns, if we're all in the mask situation and we're having a large influx of tourism and tubing, is what happens in our downtown area and stuff, is there could be a lot of discarded masks laying around on the sidewalks and stuff. So, those are things that we need to look for and or anticipate, I guess, and sort of have a plan in our back pocket. Councillor Sandy.
Yeah, and I also think, we've been talking since September that we're going to get together with outside organizations, that were impacted by our summer and whatnot, and start this conversation. So, earliest the latest has got to be beginning of March. Like, we've got to get on this conversation and at least start it and start getting some feedback from outside, different organizations and businesses, the RCMP, whatever other bodies, and just get their feedback from what happened last summer. Yeah. So that's got to get put in the calendar. and not wait 2 more weeks and then we're scrambling. You know, we're going to be busy and we've got to commit ourselves to not just every second, third, fourth Tuesday. We're going to have to put some time in.
All right. A good comment, Councillor Sandhu. And I think we brought this up a few weeks back, and the comments there were we need to get more proficient at our Zooming, because if we're going to invite those groups here, we're looking at perhaps up to 20 or 30 people attending a Zoom meeting, and that takes some skills in moderating. But I think we can pull it off because it's not a council meeting. We don't need to take minutes and things like that, but we can get some, invite different folks. So let's all give some thought then to what groups we could reach out to have those conversations and simply communicate and get some feedback. Councillor McGonigal?
And I think we've started that process with staff going out and talking to local businesses on some of the problems, but we still need the input from other entities, as Councillor Sandhu said. We've started the process. We just have to make sure we continue on the process. There's more than one page to the book that we're going to be writing.
Yeah. So put your crystal balls on the table in the upcoming days, and I think we can have this conversation in a week or so and get set to organize something. Maybe if you want to email in the groups you're thinking of, or we talk about it at a next meeting. So think about it, and we'll leave space for some input from this table on how to proceed best and what groups to reach out to. Councillor Sandhu, then Councillor Vomaka.
I was just wondering if, sorry. I'm just wondering if we could do some of this like during the day, if it works, like if it's just staff and just like try and do a couple of these, not just all evenings. I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah, you could have a very good point there, depending on what group. If it's small business owners, of course, evenings are probably best. And okay, good comment. I'm going to write that down. Councillor Vomaka.
When you were talking about the businesses, I think the first one we should be addressing is the draw, which is our Lakeview campsite, not only ours, but other campsites in the visiting areas, but also the two companies should be the first ones, I think, on those meetings. The other issue too is that the provincial health orders keep changing constantly. And so it's really hard, even as a business, to continue to try to keep up with everything. And so once we hit into the big tourist season, we don't know what the orders are going to be and how they're going to change, because they do it very quickly. But I would like that first one to start with the plans from the two tube companies on what their plans are for operating. The Lakeview Park campsite, I think we have Gordon Bay campsite, ones in our area that we can find out at least in the beginning what their plans are and go from there, because we know if they're open, people are going to come.
Thanks, Councillor Vomaka. And when you say the two companies, I don't know if there is going to be two this year or not, but also, that even larger percent of the tubes are bought in local establishments, and I'm not pointing fingers at any individual one, but so there needs to be some messaging from there as well. What's going to happen and how it would be safest to happen. So good point, so. And I'm getting ideas now on what sectors and how to organize it as well. So, Councillor Sandhu.
Just one more thought. This also goes hand in hand with our budget process, because we could be looking at, more summer staff needed if whatever we're going to be doing, right? So that's kind of got to go hand in hand with this discussion. So.
Yes, I mean it's definitely not all about the outside agencies. I mean there are things we're going to have to look at too, and give consideration to. But once again, we have to rely on our little crystal ball, and as we move closer, we'll be able to figure it out as best we can. There's no harm in having a plan. They don't usually work, as we find out every day. As soon as we walk out the door, you start again. Okay. Anything else on that topic? A good conversation, folks. And I'm starting to see a little bit clearer way forward. And I will definitely keep everybody updated now should any more details come up about things we can do from the ministries. So, looking for any notices of motion now. Don't see any hands flickering. Public relations items. Don't see anybody with any interest there at this time during this meeting. Then we can go to question period. So we will pause for another 3 minutes where the public can email in questions to general@lakecowichan.ca on anything pertaining to this agenda. So we'll 3 minutes pause will take us to 8:09. So see you then. All right, it is 8:09. We'll wait for everybody to come back and for staff to give us notification. Looks like
Is in the.
That
fish-
was
it
weird.
looked like you were in a fish tank
Fish
front of
tank.
it.
I was just going to say he was experimenting with his foreground, not his background.
Yeah, that looks scary for a second.
I'm going to do a background of Disneyland. The happiest place on earth.
Yeah.
I first went there. You weren't even born when I first went there. I'm not going to tell you how old I was. It was only 3 years old when I went there in 1958. So I've been 3 times.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Fernandez, were there any questions emailed in?
Yes, I've got one. It's from Kara Smith. Could you briefly talk about the timelines regarding the survey currently out to the public?
Was there a questionnaire?
Leave that to staff for that answer, please.
Well, the end of the month is what we have as the deadline date for responses. I think we put down February 28th, so it'll be Monday following that we should have it by
Okay.
March 1st.
And Councillor Sandu.
I think it was February 25th.
Or 25th,
I thought that's what,
just don't have the date yet. So,
because the 28th is a Sunday. So
yeah, I thought it was the 28th.
maybe 26th.
Oh, so it could be. So it's the last date on the questionnaire. The date is established there.
Okay.
I don't have it handy.
Okay. So perhaps we'll get the precise date.
I can take a quick look.
Thank you. Councillor Sandu, go ahead.
Just some comments I saw on some social media regarding that the survey went out in the water bill. Some people said they pay for water, but they didn't, like Lake Park Estates. Some people up in that area, they didn't get a survey.
Oh,
So there's a few. So I'm curious with the process, like did every household that got a water bill get a survey in it? Like did every envelope?
Yeah, it's February 26th, sorry.
Okay.
And everybody should have got one, but if they didn't, it could have been just omitted by mistake, and we can produce another one for them. And in some cases, a household may have more than one person. So then we can make copies, so they can make copies, whichever works.
and it is fillable online on our website, is it not?
Correct, yes.
Yes, thank you. And for those watching, or for councillors too, I mean, I remember a comment made during our an all candidates forum, I think, where everything should be 1 or 2 clicks, and in most cases we're not too far off on our website, so it's just a matter of folks taking some time and exploring. So it is there. I did check that it was available online. Lorna or Councillor Omaka, please.
That's okay. I did have one person though questioned as to they pay sewer, water, garbage, even though they're on the other side and they are CVRD, but they were also thinking that because they shop in our downtown and they frequent our services here, that they had valuable input. And so it was kind of hard for me to respond to that one with just, well, you live in the CVRD. So I'm wondering if when we're looking for input like this, if we could have forms maybe available to people who are outside of the area.
Yeah. Councillor Sandu.
Yeah, I mean, I thought of that also, but I mean, that's like the CVRD having something out, and we've got people kind of on the outskirts not paying the property taxes, for the CVRD, but getting something from them. So I think unless you pay property taxes, is that correct? Then
Yeah.
you actually don't have a vote in the municipal elections, and you don't have a say, so to speak, in issues.
The questionnaire, if I may, the questionnaire is geared to the taxpayers, really, at the end of the day, to taxpayers of Lake Cowichan. The residents outside the town, they may pay for water, but they may not be willing to pay for the infrastructure upgrades. So it's mostly,
And that was the confusion, because it's, well, I get a sewer, water, garbage bill, and why can I not fill in the survey?
yeah, they only pay if they may be connected to a water system, but not sewer.
Yeah. And that's been the response for the 10 plus years that I've been around in local government, that these types of surveys are put out to the tax paying citizens of that jurisdiction for comment.
No different than in an election. They don't have to say.
Yeah. So thank you. I did see Councillor Austin's hand, did I?
Well, I didn't want to be facetious, but I mean, we shop in other areas too, like Duncan and that too, and we don't have a say there, but I know how people feel that do shop here and they want to see things done. But I think if they trust that our taxpayers and those of us who, fill out the questionnaire are going to put the best foot forward and on things, I think that will work out well. They can always tell one of us what they think if we want to do it ourselves. Well, there's 2 people in our household, so we could do another survey.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. Councillor McGonigal.
Perhaps one or other jurisdiction would like to join the other, and we could all have input into everything.
You
That
daredevil.
would be
You.
the solution.
Yeah. Yeah. No, well, good conversation, guys, and we all need to understand the concept, so, and how it applies, and it seems to apply across the board, whether it be an election or a survey or a referendum question. All right. So that ends the question period. And that moves us to number 12, which is in camera. Mr. Fernandez, could you introduce the reasons for going in camera tonight?
I can indeed. Section 92 of the community charter requires that before a meeting or part of a meeting is closed to the public, council must state by resolution why the meeting is being closed. And the basis on which the meeting is to be closed falls under section 91C of the community charter on labor relations or other employee relations, and section 91K, negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of municipal service that in the view of council could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public.
Thank you, Mr. Fernandez. A motion to go in camera, please. Moved by Councilor Wamaka, seconded by Councilor Austin. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much. And now we will close this meeting and await for a meeting invite to the in-camera session. Thank you very much for everybody, and thank you to the public for attending tonight's open portion of the meeting.
And good night.
Good night.